What Jordan Davis has done is allowed other guys to excel. If you take him out, who fills that role and lets the other guys kind of roam the wilderness for free?
You're tuned in here on Birds 365, an undefeated Wednesday show. We'll continue to call them undefeated as long as Eagles are undefeated. Plain and simple. And the question is, will they be undefeated when we roll out our Friday show this week? Because they've got a short week, Thursday's game, but plenty to talk about even before we get there. And we'll do so with our bud from down the shore, Mike Gill from the Sports
Mikey
Fan.
Mike.
What's up?
MG, appreciate your getting up early with us today. All week we led up to, will Howie make that second move? Last week he traded for Robert Quinn. A lot of rumors floating around about who was going to get moved, who the Eagles had interest in. Were they close to getting a deal done? 10 trades was actually made yesterday, the most ever on deadline deal day in the history of the National Football League, none of which included the Philadelphia Eagles. Were you surprised?
Mildly surprised, only because I thought maybe the whole Jordan Davis thing, I guess, added a little wrinkle to the deadline, right? I'm wondering if they were looking at maybe a third corner or a third safety, just some depth there, and then that injury happened, and maybe they were reevaluating whether they thought they need it. And I heard you guys right before I came on. I kind of think this is going to be a big deal. I mean, the way that John Gannon has been able to call defenses with five-man fronts and Jordan Davis over the nose, they don't have another guy that can really play that role. What Jordan Davis has done is allowed other guys to excel. If you take him out, who fills that role and lets the other guys kind of roam the wilderness for free? I don't know, man. I'm a little concerned about John Gannon as a play caller moving forward. So there's not too many of those guys to go out and get. I know Dallas went out and got Hankinson last week. They tried to get some beef up front because they're getting steamrolled on the ground. So I'm wondering if Howie was trying to find someone to take that spot, or if he figured, we'll get him back in a couple of weeks, but maybe that diverted. But so mildly surprised, but not shocked that they didn't get in on the game. I am a little surprised at the amount of movement and the level of players that went. I mean, we never see this in the NFL. We had 10 trades yesterday.
Yes.
10 trades. Bradley Chubb, TJ Hawkinson, I think, at the top of the list of impact in terms of the Super Bowl contenders.
You look at it, you're absolutely right, man. I mean, there's a lot of movement, and that's because the parity in the NFL is so so much of a something that they worked for so long that there's no super teams, and it really can be just one player changes the dynamics of an entire team and their focus. Same thing happened with A.J. Brown. It changed the entirety of how this team went into this season, and how aggressive they were from that point on, and going out and getting free agents that, or trading for guys that could help them. And they've done a great job of it. Howie's done a masterful job of it. When I look at this roster, they do have guys that can not play at the same level as Jordan. But we got to remember, Hargraves comes from that same system of a 30 front where he played a head-up nose. That's where he made his hay at. That's where he became a player, in that system where he was a head-up nose. So he could make a seamless transition there. And then you plug in a Milton Williams in that 50 front where you put Milton Williams at that 3 technique. Then you have Hargraves at the nose, and then you put Fletcher Cox at the other 3 technique. Or they can bring up and activate Marvin Wilson. Marvin Wilson is a head-up nose. That's what he did the entirety of camp. He played well at that position. I thought he was going to make the 53-man roster. But there's no way you take away – there's no way you could put in the value that you had with the guy that's 6'6", 340 pounds and run a 4.740. You can't replace that type of defensive output, or him being the immovable rock sitting right there in the middle of that defense. You can't even simulate that. There's no way that an offense will react the way they react when he comes in the game. So that's something that, until he comes back, will be a void or mute, point for us to even talk about, because he's not. You won't find that type of player.
Right, and Barrett, I mean, Hargrave has some experience there, but you're losing 50 pounds of man.
Absolutely, yes.
And you have a situation where Davis, just by sheer mass, is taking the center and pushing him back into the backfield, which is disrupting a whole bunch of stuff. in the society that we live in, if you don't have numbers on your bubblegum card, right? I'm going back to the baseball cards here. You flip them over. Oh, this guy did this. Jordan Davis has nothing on the back of the bubblegum card. So therefore, we don't look at the impact he makes. When you watch the video and see him take a grown man and push him 2 and 3 yards back into the backfield, that disrupts the timing. It disrupts everything, but it also allows guys on the outside to get a little bit more freedom to get some one-on-ones because you're pushing a guy one-on-one into the backfield. Many times teams need to slide that guard to give a little help because and that frees up Fletcher Cox. What did we see last week, Barrett? Javon Hargrave, 2 sacks. It's no coincidence that more snaps for Jordan Davis and now more of the interior guys are starting to break out and get to the quarterback.
All right, but time out, Philadelphia. I get the point that you're making about the numbers aren't there, but they don't have to be. If he's occupying, let me finish. If he's occupying 2 men, then he's getting his job done. So you're right. It's not all about the numbers. But let me throw a number at you. 40%. That's the snaps that he plays, 40%. They're not losing the quarterback who plays every snap. They're not losing a safety who plays. They're not losing either of their 2 unbelievable cover corners who are number 1 and 2 in passing percentage against them. They're losing a guy that plays less than half the snaps. So I know he's going to be missed, and I know that they're going to have to reconfigure some things to get his 40%, only 40% of the snaps covered. But that's all that he's been asked to do. That's all that they've used him for this year. They can't replace that?
Well, I guess, it depends on the situations. Look, it's about looks. If they ran 100 plays in the game and he's in for 40 of them, that's a big chunk of plays that he is a part of. And
not comparing to the other key players on this game.
Right,
what
but
other key player is playing 40% of the snaps?
I think you look at, running back situations. I mean, you look at what's going on in Dallas. You take Zeke Elliott out 100% of the plays, and now Pollard looks like he is the premier back in the league. Why? Because I'm getting more snaps. He still has a pretty big role in the amount of snaps that he plays, but I think it's just a chain reaction. Those 40% of the snaps, what happens on those 40% of the plays? Is that when you're getting your interceptions? Is that when you're getting your turnovers? Is that when you're getting your more pressure on the quarterback? You're not going to get it 100% of the time, definitely. But in those 40% of the plays, is that when your big plays are happening? You might have a guy who comes in, and he's a slot receiver. He only runs 25% of the plays. But when he comes in, he runs that seam route and hits you 1 out of 4 times. I'll take 25%. 60-yard touchdown pass, wouldn't you?
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's the impact plays in which you're talking about him being on the field. Impact meaning when teams want to heat it up, they want to run the ball, they want to try to flip the script and get time possession going in their direction, making our defense tired. It's usually the other way around. It's been the other way around. He's been influential in those first and second down where teams have tried to run the ball and they've got this guy sitting, steadfast in the middle of it and they can't move him. It's not just him being out there and what he's doing as far as stopping the run, but it's also what he's doing to the psyche of that offensive line, being that guy that they can't move. I've been in a position where I've had to block a Ted Williams, a Saragusa, and be like, man, no matter how hard we do, man, I can't move this son of a bitch nowhere. You know what I'm saying? That's in your head. You're thinking that, and you're talking to the offensive lineman next to you. Man, this dude is tough, man. He's quick. He's big. He's strong. You can't move him. And listen, and that's the psyche that you're going through.
If on 40% of their offensive coordinators' plays, he has to keep in mind, that's 40% of his play calls that have been altered.
Exactly.
Then my question to both of you would be, why not 60%? If he is that havoc wreaking, why wouldn't you put him out there for more snaps if you're the Eagles?
Oh, it's a fair question, and I think they've been ramping him up. He started at below 30, now he's up to 40. I think as the season goes on, what did Nick Castellanos say the other night? Over 162 games, I can't focus on every pitch playing right field. I don't know that you could play the guy 100% of the snaps for 17 games, but I can work you up to get to the playoffs where now you're probably playing 60 to 70% and you get them up to that spot. We all want instant gratification every week, but over 17, it's a a slow process sometimes. And I think Jordan Davis was working his way to get more snaps.
You look at it, you're talking about a young guy that even in college, they cut the number of reps he was out there just to make sure that he was explosive and took advantage of every single rep he was in the game. And I think it's kind of the same thing with this Eagles team. They want him out there to have quality, not quantity, but quality. They want those reps to be split up, that he's giving max effort. He's making things happen. He's becoming a guy that, when he's in there, he's a wrecker. He's a wrecking ball. And I think that's the biggest impact that a young guy can have, that they're putting him in situational positions where he can go full speed every time he's in there. So I think that's more so what they were trying to do. And I thought they were doing a pretty good job of it. It's different, from an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman. An offensive lineman, you put out there and you play every single snap. You don't come out. Defensive linemen, they're a little more sparingly dealt out there because they have to go 100% every single play. And that can be exhausting, man. Even though offensive line is exhausting, it's more so with the defensive line.
Yeah, when did that happen, though? When, Reggie White never came off the field, right?
Right.
Those guys never come off the field. When did it become acceptable that I'm going to give you 50% or 70% of the snaps? It's just a weird dynamic how things evolve, where teams decided, hey, I'm going to get the fresh guys and just keep rotating. Dexter Manley never came off the field. Bruce Smith never left the field, right? These guys never left the field. They just kept coming after you.
I think it became a thing when situational football developed, when they had these spread offenses come out there, and they wanted guys that were smaller in stature, like the guys like Derek Thomas, Ken Harvey, guys that are smaller in build, linebacker-esque type of players that can rush the passer and get around offensive tackles who are slower. You're talking about a guy that if you guys line up and ran a 40 side by side, you get blown away, as an offensive lineman. Now you're asking him to block somebody backwards. I mean, that's something that, you could put a guy like Jason Gilden out there, a guy like Kevin Green, and, all those guys who are smaller in stature. They can come up the field, they can rush up the field and really put them in a position where it's situational times they can be an impact in that, and then go back to their regular position, on first or second down. That's when I really started to see a difference and a changing of the guards, when those situational players became impact players on third and long, the money downs, that's what we call them, the money downs.
And Jody, that would then be the genesis of why he doesn't play more snaps, because he doesn't rush the passer. And you want to have that element in your defensive play call, is I want to be able to get to the quarterback.
Right.
To answer your question, Mike, about when they started rotating guys, sports has become specialized. Every single sport, not just the NFL. I remember when your baseball pitching staff was 10 guys. Your 4 starters, your 1 long reliever, and the 2 guys who weren't quite good enough to be starters but were good, so they pitched at the back end of the game. And then you had 3 guys named Mo, Larry, and Curly that nobody ever wanted to see in a game, sitting out there in the bullpen by themselves. So, yeah, the game changes, but I'm wondering, did the Eagles change because Jordan Davis is out? The way you guys are talking him up, should I be worried about Damon Pierce going for 150 yards this week without Jordan Davis in there to completely stop the run or take up 2 blockers so one of his mates on the defensive line can make a tackle? Is this like the Eagles defense crumbling?
It would be one concern coming up. Look, I think it's interesting. They have a timeline coming up this week. Texans, they like to run the ball. By the way, they're the worst rush defense I think I've ever seen. They are horrible at stopping the run. So this could be just a fast game of both teams running back like an old Navy Air Force game here. 2 teams running up and down the field.
An armed forces game, yeah.
Right, exactly. But they have a stretch when they play Tennessee, and then they have those 3 straight road games against teams that like to run the ball. The Giants, the Bears, and Dallas, and they all run the ball a little differently. The Giants do it with Saquon Barkley. The Bears do it with the quarterback Fields now, they're finding their way with Fields. He was used horribly the first couple weeks. They're now kind of integrating him a little bit better into their offense. And then, of course, the Cowboys.
Looks like Jalen Hurts, right? He looks like Jalen Hurts. They're using the same concepts that they do with Jalen Hurts.
Right. They have got a much better grasp on what he is. And then, of course, Dallas has the two-headed monster. So I think that stretch of 4 games, Derrick Henry, who ran for 200-plus yards against this Texans team last week, the Eagles are going to have their hands full, and that might coincide with when Jordan Davis comes back. But in terms of this game on Thursday night, if the Houston Texans want to have a chance and stay in this game, yeah, you're probably going to see them turn around and hand the ball off a lot and see what John Gannon does. Because one of the Achilles heels of this team has been stopping the run. We saw Detroit. Now, the 2 unique things about the 2 games where they struggled against the run, Detroit was down 2 scores and kept running the ball. You don't see that a whole heck of a lot.
No, you don't.
Dallas got down 17 points and kept running the ball. So Philly's personnel was, hey, you're not going to run the ball. Dallas and Detroit both said, we're going to keep running the ball, and they struggled to stop the run in those instances. So it'll be interesting to see if teams now say, all right, that kid's out. Let's see you try to stop the run against us.
Well, yeah, they kept their nickel front end. They put their 4 down. We call it when he had the 4 down and 2 linebackers, and you take one of the linebackers out. They played their nickel front, thinking that they were going to pass. They didn't pass. That's why they were able to run the ball because they had a light box. I doubt if you'll have a light box against Davis Mills. I think they're gonna kind of clog it up a little bit, put 8 men in the box, keep Epps at that free safety, and play man-to-man on the outside, knowing they can allocate resources to stop the run because they're not that very good at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks banged up. Nico Collins banged up. Both those guys have some injury issues. They're not great on the outside. One thing in this particular game, too, is I think you can definitely get past, you mentioned Pierce, Jody. They just don't have enough weapons. It's kind of like the Giants. The Giants just don't have the weapons on the outside. They can run the ball against lesser teams, but when they have to get into a offensive, creativity situation, they're snapping the ball to Barkley. They just don't have the weapons on the outside. This Texans team is has less weapons than the Giants do. So this is a real uphill. But like we said, I saw somebody tweet last night, if you thought the Astros had a rough night, wait till you see what happens to the Texans on Thursday night.
I was glad to see that the Eagles didn't make a trade at the trade deadline. If they had, and Howie hadn't given much up, it's not like I would come out here and say, what the hell are you thinking, Howie Roseman? But the whole running back thing, they needed to add another running back. They've got 3 guys that they activate week in and week out. And yeah, Kenny Gainwell's having a little bit of a disappointing year. But when they got Trey Sermon, the one game they put him in, he actually ran the ball well a couple of times. And I liked him coming out of the draft to get him off the scrap heap from the 49ers. I thought was an outstanding move. Why do you think? Just a different dynamic? I think it's pretty apparent that we may have overhyped, or at least John did, the whole Hines thing yesterday, that Sirianni would want to bring in another ex-Colt guy. He didn't go for all that much. He was traded, but it wasn't that big a deal. And if the Eagles really wanted him, they probably could have gotten him. Why do you think they, at least Rumorville was saying the Eagles were hot and heavy to add another back?
There's a lot. Hines, first off, I thought they may have some interest in for those reasons, but also he catches the ball. That's the kind of back that I think we've been looking at, either this short yardage guy, which has kind of fizzled out because why? Jalen Hurts is their short yardage back. He gets all the short yards. Gainwell's done a nice job of kind of finding the little creases and sliding his way through. But normally when they need a yard, they go to Jalen Hurts. But Hines, I think I brought up last week, is a guy, not him particularly, but of that style of running back who could catch the ball out of the backfield. That's not the specialty of Miles Sanders. We thought it was going to be the specialty of Gainwell. They haven't used him in that role. But I think it was the narrative at the beginning of the year is that, well, maybe they don't trust Miles Sanders. Maybe they don't like Miles Sanders. And therefore, in our minds, they want to find somebody else. Well, it seems that they like Miles Sanders, that they trust Miles Sanders, and that they didn't think they needed somebody else. So I think, Jody, that's where the talk of the running back maybe kind of entered in. But as this season has materialized, when has that been an issue for them? When have they not been able to get that short yard? When have they not been able to get the first down? When have they not had the right personnel on this roster with the 3 running backs they have? I like Boston Scott, too. I just don't think they use him enough.
No, they don't. You're right.
There's only so many touches, though. That's the issue.
You're absolutely right. I a lot of the times, I'm like, I don't get into the we need it back because that's not what the new NFL is these days. You got the outliers like the Titans. They're outliers in this whole situation. You look at the G-men. They're like that because they have no choice. They're devoid of talent. Also, so they have to be innovative. Dable has put those guys in a position where they've been very successful trying to run these gadget plays and smoke and mirrors to win those games that they've won. This is not one of those. This is not a system in which they need to run the ball with a one back or a big back or anything like that. They do more so in the passing game and the RPO game, in which Shane Steichen has been innovative enough that you can't get a beat on what he's doing. He has so many plays that veer off of one play that their offensive play, but it probably would have been about this thick. But the way that he calls, it goes up this thick because you have RPOs that turn into four means in which you can get the ball to somebody. You can just hand it off to Miles Sanders, or Jalen Hurts can keep it, or he can throw it to the out route by the tight end Goddard. Or if you don't do that, the guy that's going to crack in, the receiver's going to crack on the guy that's over Goddard. He just runs a little pattern and turns around and makes himself available. That's 4 different ways in which the ball can go in just one simple play. So they're just more of a play selection as opposed to players being the focal point.
And Barrett, the thickness of the playbook, I think, tells you what they think about the quarterback.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You have Bobby Hoying, right? You have Bobby Hoying. You probably had a sheet of loose leaf paper. Here you go. Right? You get Jalen Hurts. They trust this guy so much that they just keep adding and adding and adding because they trust that he's going to make the right decision. He's going to read the right plays, and that he's going to make the right play on the field. And then, by the way, I said, somebody asked me yesterday, why don't people buy Hurts? And I said, well, it's a byproduct of at the beginning of the season you didn't buy him. So now you can't change your opinion because you've already dug in and say, I don't like this guy. All right, fine. Maybe you don't like this guy and you just think he's an average player. That's not my opinion. And by the way, I was an advocate in the offseason of playing Hurts this year and giving him another year. Let's just say you think he's an average player. Fine. He has average traits. This shows you what players around you will do. It makes an average player a good player. Yep. These players have pulled more out of an average player. I don't think he's average. I think he's a good player. Are these players making him great? Right now they are. Can he keep the level of greatness? That is what these next 10 games will find out.
You can have an opinion on Jalen Hurts prior to the start of the season today. Where he's a top 5 quarterback. The numbers say that. We can all have opinions, but then you have to look at the results, and the results are 10 wins in a row, never been done in the 90-year history by a Philadelphia Eagle quarterback, 5th best passer rating in the National Football. These are facts. Yes. Opinions are one thing, facts are another, and you can't fight the facts. And it isn't a 2-game run or a 4-game run. We're talking 10 consecutive wins for Hurts, so those that are still clinging to it.
And guys, Barrett, Jody, the confidence that he continues to pull out of himself. He makes the throw to A.J. Brown. You don't just make that throw. You make that throw because you have confidence in yourself to make it and that he's going to go get it. He throws that to Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's a pretty damn good playmaking safety. Exactly. And he says, I don't care. I'm going to throw this ball because I know I can get it to where I can put it for him to go get it. Not that I'm going to place it perfectly, that I know that he's going to go get it for me.
You know what
That's
that is,
where you know these guys are humming.
You know what that is? I keep telling people it's not a huge catch radius. He has a forgiving catch radius as it pertains to A.J. Brown. You could throw it to him, a bad pass to him, and you know two things going to happen. Either he's going to catch it, he's going to drop it, but no one else is going to catch it.
Well, and guys, I said this on my show yesterday. Donovan McNabb was a good quarterback. Was he great? Debatable. He was good. But guess what? When he got Terrell Owens, he was great.
Yep.
That's what having a player does. You might just be good. That player made him great. Right now, whatever you think of Jalen Hurts, if you think he's average, these players are making him good. If he's good, these guys are making him great.
All right, Mike, you mentioned trust, and I want to get your take on this, something John and I talked about the last 2 days and then got new information on it yesterday. Eagles are up 21, 22, 23 points 35-13, 22 points in the fourth quarter. And Jalen Hurts came off the field. They put Gardner Minshew out there. They put all their backup offensive linemen out there. They put their backup wide receivers out there. Yes, Kenny Gainwell actually got on the field. Miles got a seat. They basically pulled all their starters on offense. Didn't even get a first down. Turned the ball over. The punt only goes to the 49. Yet they kept their starting defense in there. Not talking about the defensive line because those rotate 40%. Didn't even get Jordan Davis this week because he got hurt, so he couldn't get his 40%. But everybody else in and out on the defensive line. No substitutions at linebacker. No substitutions in the defensive backfield. John, my partner McMullen, did ask Gannon about that yesterday, and he threw the coach under the bus, said, oh, we talked to Nick about it, meaning Nick said, no, we're not putting the subs in. No, because the Steelers were getting the ball at midfield, and Gannon mentioned that. He said, well, we were kind of pushed back. They have so little confidence in Nakobe Dean and Kayvon Wallace and Zach McPherson that they couldn't get him on the field up by 23 points with 7 minutes to go. Really?
Right.
Are the Eagles screwed if they get an injury to a Darius Slay or a Marcus Epps or a TJ Edwards because they don't have confidence in putting their backups out there up 3 touchdowns with 7 minutes to go?
I think it's a great point for John to bring up. Why? You asked me this last week. Why don't teams take a look? Hey, let me get you out there and get you some. I said it. I just want to get my players out there just to show them the speed of the difference of a game in the event that somebody gets hurt. I think they're telling you all you need to know. We have a lead, but we still don't trust these guys on the outside because one big play and the Steelers are back in the game. So we'll give some run to our backup guys up front, but we're not ready to concede our secondary yet because we don't trust those guys. And the Dean thing is interesting, too. I don't think he got a snap last week.
No.
And people are talking about, well, Kaiser White or TJ Edwards, White is a 1-year deal, and they'll just replace him next year with Dean. If you can't put him on the field in those kind of moments to get him to show him the speed of the game, what do you ultimately think of this player? So, yeah, I certainly, and I mentioned it last week, Jody, I would like to see guys with leads get a feel of the speed of the game so that the coaches can evaluate these guys. To say, hey, I feel comfortable letting Kaiser White go because I saw this guy play in the speed of the game and he handled himself okay. So definitely something to consider. Why are they not giving those guys snaps with these seemingly big leads?
And Mike, I too said it. I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now, but the Eagles hadn't had a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. That's the one thing they haven't done. They've checked a whole bunch of boxes this year, but the one thing they really haven't done is put a game away and continuing to add to that. They actually did it this week. It presented itself, and the coaches still said, no, we'll keep our starting linebackers out there.
Yeah, that I totally agree with that. Is in the NFL in general, and it's not just the Eagles, I think. It's why don't these teams feel comfortable, and maybe it's because they don't feel comfortable when you have a 3 score. What's the threshold of score that you finally feel, right. I can put you out there? Because, one big play happens, you take a shot down the field, and the momentum of a game can turn pretty quickly. But with 6 minutes left in a game, you can give me a series or two to go get my feet wet in the NFL speed of the game.
Well, I'm telling you this. Just being realistic, I just think that Gannon just said, you know what? No, I'm just not letting them in. I'm playing my guys. I mean, he could just say that. It has nothing to do with what we think is media or reps or anything else. I want to keep my guys in. I had to have it for him.
Did he say that he threw? You said I didn't see the transcript.
Oh, he put it. Yeah, no, he put it on Sirianni. He said,
so he's saying I wanted to make the switch, and because I'm thinking to myself, hey, maybe John Gannon, he's trying to get a head coaching job. He's averaging 16.9 points a game. That's a pretty darn good number that I could put on my resume. If we give up some points and I'm now giving up more points, I don't want to give up 21 points a game. I'm pretty good with 16 points a game. But you're saying he checked with the head coach and the coach said, no, not yet.
Did he come out and say that? No, but you could read between the lines pretty damn easily. The question was, you rotate your defensive linemen in and out. The offense brought in second team. You're back 7. You didn't really swap anybody out. Did you consider it? And Gannon's answer was, good question, John. Those guys get along. But he said, we checked with the head coach.
Yeah.
And we were kind of backed up, meaning that Pittsburgh got the ball at midfield. Didn't bother the offensive coordinator to put in all the backups when they got the ball at the 10-yard line. They didn't worry about being backed up on offense. But, oh, God forbid, we can't make substitutions on defense because the other team's getting the ball at midfield. You tell me what it means when he says, we checked with the head coach and we didn't do it. Aren't we supposed to read into that? I ran it up the flagpole and the head coach didn't salute, so I couldn't get my subs in there. That's what I made of it. How about you?
Yeah, I think they just said no. I think they're like, all right, well, we're just not going to do it. I mean, they don't have to do it. I was on a Pittsburgh team that we were going in. We had won 13 games in a row, and the starter still played in the last game against Buffalo. So sometimes, the coach is like, hey, we're going to stick to our gun. We're going to do what we want to do.
All right, but Barrett, I think Mike understands my point. I'm not sure you're getting it. The offense did. They pulled all the offensive guys. So it wasn't like, no. We're on a roll. We're keeping all our starters in there. No, they swapped out almost all their offensive starters. There were no offensive. Dallas Goedert wasn't out on the field for the last offensive possession. The offense pulled them all out, and the defense kept them all in there. So it's either Gannon or Sirianni. You can't put Steichen into this mix. You can't put Sirianni in the overall mix because he allowed all of the offensive starters to come out. Why specifically the backup Sunday?
You answered your own question. This is an offensive-minded team. The offense is what's making this team good. The defense still has some work to do. The defense is good. They're up there in all the major categories. But I think the defense, they feel as though it has a little more work to do. But offensively, this is an offensive powerhouse. So this is, I trust the offense more than I trust the defense. That's it right there. I trust the offense more so than I trust the defense. That's what it is.
Well, and we've seen a couple situations too where, and I think they agree with Barrett on this, they trust that the depth of the offensive line. They don't mind replacing those offensive linemen. They've already gotten the speed reps. They've gotten chances to play at this speed level because guys have gone out. So I agree with Barrett. I don't know that they think the same way we're kind of making it make sense in our minds, but I definitely think they trust those backup offensive linemen and offensive players than they do their backup secondary players.
All right, but let me run this one by you. The drop-off from pick whichever starting wide, even if you just want to go Quez, forget about A.J. Brown and or Devonta Smith. The drop-off from Quez to Britton Covey. Covey got snaps at wide receiver in the game on Sunday. Are you telling me the drop-off between whichever corner you want to take, a McPherson or Kayvon Wallace and C.J. Gardner-Johnson or Nakobe Dean and Kazir White, is that great? That it's less between Covey and A.J. Brown as it is between Dean and the linebackers?
But I can control on offense who's getting the ball. I can't control who you're targeting if I'm on defense. And if they see somebody on that defense and they say, look, they don't have Claypool anymore, but hey, Claypool, you're a big physical receiver. You got Josiah Scott on you. I'm going to go down the field and put one up on you. That's where you can't control who they're targeting on the defensive side of the ball. So to answer that question, I don't have to throw the ball to Covey. I can say you got some snaps, but I don't have to do anything with them. I can't control who the other team's going to target and go right down the field on. And I don't want to expose I don't even know who some of these guys are in the second. If
Zach McPherson.
I know McPherson, but if Slayer Bradbury got hurt for 2-3 weeks, would McPherson be the guy on the outside? Is he the next man up?
Yes, yeah. McPherson's the next man up. I think Josh's name, Josh
Joby.
Josh Joby. He's probably the second guy up. We know it's safety. It's kind of tough in safety because all they have is Kayvon Wallace and Reed Blankenship.
They couldn't get any of those guys on the field on Sunday. Come on, explain it to me, JG. He gave a BS answer yesterday. All right, let's get back to the task at hand, which is the Texans tomorrow night. They're not a good football team. They're 1-5-1. They've got the second worst record in the league Only the Lions, who it seems like about 22 years ago, back in week 1, the Lions actually hung in with the Eagles still late in the game. But they are who they are. They're a bad football team. I mentioned Dave Zangaro wrote a good article on NBC Sports Philly, said one thing you don't have to worry about the Eagles is they won't get bored with their coaching staff, with their leadership. They will stay on top of things. So I'm looking for ways to maybe get the Eagles tested. Are they maybe just a little bit distracted by the Philly success here? Mike, is there any way that the Eagles go down to Houston and not come away with as easy a victory as they had this week against the Steelers?
No, if anything, guys, I think this Phillies thing is helping because it is taking the distraction away from a team that so far has not lost a game and putting more added pressure on them. But what it is also allowing, and Jason Kelsey brought this up, I mentioned it before, Tobias Harris brought it up for the Sixers. They're watching this fan base go nuts over a team. By the way, nobody showed up to Phillies games in the middle of a pennant race this year. And yet now it's as if this place was filled with 46,000 every night. Not the case. But
Right.
The teams are seeing this. I think this is the perfect setup to not have that letdown type of game. They're seeing the energy at that Citizens Bank Park and got to be saying, we want to be a part of that. And by how do we be a part of that? We stay perfect. So when that season's over, that carries right over to us being perfect when we have our stretch of games in November when they're done. And somebody said to me, is the Pittsburgh game a letdown? I said, I think this works perfectly. Come out of the bye. The Phillies own that whole week. Nobody's paying attention to what the Eagles are doing during the bye week. They came out, and I said, I thought they would have their most complete game of the year and just dominate that team. Pretty much happened. And then I think a similar situation here with the Houston thing and the fans and the Phillies. The Eagles are flying under the radar to the point that, I don't know, now the game's not on Amazon Prime in our market, but you could make a strong argument that in the Philadelphia market, you might have more people watching the Phillies on Thursday night. When the hell has that ever happened?
Oh, I think the game is on Amazon Prime, but it's also
right.
I saw this morning, PHL 17.
PHL 17, right. In our market, see, you could watch the game. That's my point. You could watch the game on over-the-air television. If you only could watch the game on Prime, people might just say, the heck with it. I'm not even going to do it. I'm just going to watch the Phillies. But it's a good conversation of who in the Philly market is going to get higher ratings, a possible Game 5 clincher or the Eagles playing this Texans team. And this is why I think it's good for the Eagles. They're just kind of hanging out under the radar at 7-0, by the way.
7-0. This is unbelievable. We're talking about 7-0.
I wrote an article about this yesterday. This is an interesting stretch because everyone keeps saying, well, the schedule, they haven't played anybody. You could really pull away right here. They're getting pushed. Minnesota's one game. I know they beat them. Dallas and the Giants. They're hanging in there. You cannot afford to slip up against a lesser team because these teams now, Minnesota, Dallas, they play each other coming up. The Giants play Minnesota. If Philly wins these next 3 games in the month of November, those teams might start falling off, and you could have a 3 or possibly 4-game cushion for that number 1 seed. That's why these games coming up against lesser opponents cannot be overlooked.